Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my review of the hottest microbrand you've never heard of. Perhaps I'm projecting just a little bit there. Perhaps the hottest microbrand I had never heard of would be more appropriate. It seems that even though I have been well and truly living and breathing watches for a number of years now, I'm not immune to the occasional blind spot when it comes to new releases. I got an email from a local subscriber called Marcus a couple of months ago offering to loan me a watch, and when I read his email I was like, what the hell is a Furlan Mari Rosso Grigio? Frankly, it sounded more like he was offering me a bottle of wine than a wristwatch, but a little bit of research later and it looked like I had totally missed one of the hottest micros to launch last year. Now I'm going to say something which may shock you here, especially given what I've just said. This watch launched on Kickstarter, it features a mecha quartz movement, and it's a homage. I'm going to say something else that might shock you. Used Furlan Maris sell for double retail on Chrono24. How on earth do we reconcile these two seemingly incompatible statements? Is this watch another example of a runaway hype train, or is it any good? Let's flip the camera and find out. Okay, so let's try and unpack some of those shocking statements that I made in the introduction in rough chronological order, see if we can work out what has gone on here, why this brand was and is such a big hit. Let's start by having a look at the Kickstarter campaign. 2,032 backers, over £1 million Swiss francs. That is an epic Kickstarter campaign. Now at 320 Swiss francs per watch, a quick bit of math suggests that many people bought multiple watches. Their initial target of 75,000 Swiss francs for the campaign suggests that perhaps even Mr. Furlan and Mr. Almari were surprised by their own success. So note, 320 Swiss francs during the Kickstarter, roughly 350 US dollars. I think if you bought one at that price, you did very well. On to the movement, Seiko's Mecha Quartz. Now, I don't even have to check the specs here. Dual register layout, no ticking seconds. This is a VK64. I must have reviewed 10 of them on the channel so far, at least. I'm a big fan of the Mecha Quartz. They look like mechanicals with 5 ticks of that central chrono hand per second, but they're as accurate and reliable and economical as quartz. Plus or minus 15 seconds per month variants. Slim, light, 50-cent battery every 2 to 3 years, pretty much maintenance free. I've never really understood why people sneer at Mecha Quartz. Apart from anything else, there are very few alternatives for chronos at the affordable end of the spectrum. Seagull's ST19 is cheap, but has a much higher failure rate, and the next rung up the ladder for mechanical movements is the ETA 2894, and really, you're pushing $1,000 when you put one of those in the back of your watch, so it's great to see the VKs getting some love for once. And what about the homage thing? From what I can see, there is a lot of fluff written about Furlan Mari, including by Furlan Mari. Their own website talks about watches telling stories, their designs being birthed in Geneva. It even says as much on the packaging, as you'll see in a minute, and the brand being amazed by the work of mid-century case designer Francois Bourgel. What they don't come out and actually say is that they copied one of his designs almost one for one. The watches they launched with on Kickstarter were a direct copy of a 1463 reference Patek Philippe from the early 1950s, right down to the Romans at 12 and 6. The watch I'm looking at today is their slightly newer permanent collection, features Arabics at 12 and 6, but again those Arabics are direct copies of ones that featured on 50s Pateks. Now of course I have no problem with homage watches, I have reviewed dozens of them on the channel. Not everyone can afford or wants to spend big bucks on a luxury watch. And I've been saying for years there is a big difference in attitude towards a one-for-one copy of a current catalogue watch and a one-for-one copy of a vintage design from the past. I think you can see this reflected in the kind of press that Furlan Mari have been getting since they launched. Fratello, Time and Tide, Fratello, Revolution, and Fratello all feature numerous highly favourable articles about the brand. I can't see many of those websites featuring Paganis or San Martins anytime soon, can you? They even won a prestigious GPHG award in late 2021 in the Revelation category for young brands. Again, this award was judged by members of the watch media, some of whom wrote highly favourable articles about the watch a few months prior. Again, it's unlikely that Seastern or Chronos will feature on next year's shortlist. It is worth noting that it costs a chunk of cash to enter your watch into the awards, and even more if it gets shortlisted. So you have a certain sector of the watch media legitimising an almost one-for-one homage of a Patek that was available for a very reasonable price during the Kickstarter campaign anyway. Let's face it, it's gorgeous. So we're beginning to get a picture here. A lovely, admittedly borrowed design, a very fair price, and the endorsement from the upper echelons of the watch media, not from guys in Star Wars t-shirts making videos in their spare bedrooms. But why are they trading at a premium used? Well, I think perhaps 320 Swiss francs was a little too little. I'm sure if they had known they were going to sell 2,000 plus, they would ask for a little or a lot more. And the brand seems to have adopted a marketing strategy centered on scarcity and discontinuation from the very beginning. Now we see what this does to used prices elsewhere in the watch world, don't we? Even the rumour that a Rolex might be discontinued sees prices go up by 25% overnight. And an actual discontinuation adds another 25%. Those Kickstarter launch models have all now been, in inverted commas, retired. And the also, in inverted commas, permanent collection variants, including this Rosso Grigio, are out of stock. So if you actually want to buy one of these today, you're forced to go grey, and for that, you must pay the price. But is it any good? Well, I've been hinting at it throughout. I think it's a really nice little watch, and there's a level of attention to detail end to end here really that I don't think I've ever seen from a brand so early in their lifespan and so affordably positioned. I mean, just look at the box. That is a little work of art in itself, is it not? And I do like these small retro chronos in 38mm, and they've kept this one very neat on wrist with a thickness of 10.8mm, a lug to lug of 46. 20mm lug width is the modern standard for this style of retro chrono, ironically, and 52 grams is an appropriate weight to finish it all off. Case finish is nicely done. I'm sure Francois Bourgel would have approved. Vintage style lugs are drilled and nicely turned down. An unsigned 7mm crown matches the one on the 50s Pateks, as do those lovely decorated pushers. The step bezel has both brushed and polished surfaces, and that's a nicely integrated piece of double dome sapphire crystal. 50 meters of water resistance is 20 more than you would get from a Seagull 1963 by way of reference. The leather strap is very pleasant, vegetable tanned. I think it really suits the watch. It has quick release spring bars in addition to those drilled lugs, so strap changes no problem at all. A nicely detailed little brushed and polished buckle featuring the brand name on the upper surface and more serial number style markings on the undersurface. The case also features serial markings between the lugs, as was the style back in the 50s and as is the style in luxury watches like Rolex today. Again, a nice touch. The case back is almost sterile, but it suits the watch, and most of the attention to detail therefore has gone into the flip side. The dial and handset is pure Patek, but it has been very nicely done. This being a VK64, the register at 3 is a 24-hour indicator, and the register at 9 is a 60-minute chronograph. Handset, high polished silver, leaf style, and very nicely done as well. The printing on this particular example looks great too. Predominantly mid-grey, but with pale grey, a ring of white, and just a little bit of colour in the form of those red Arabics. And rather than a tachymeter scale, this Furlan Mari has a pulsometer scale. You're never going to use it, but you are never going to use a tachymeter scale either. Let's be honest with ourselves. The double dome sapphire with AR undercoating keeps everything nice and legible, and you do get some nice distortion if viewing from the extremities, as you can see here with that Salvador Dali-esque melting subdial. On this permanent collection model, the Romans of the Kickstarter are replaced by applied numerals at 6 and 12, again high polished silver. Their height and the reflections of the hands passing over them adds a little something extra to the dial. On wrist it wears really neatly. I like this size of watch, I like this style of watch. I've got several pieces like this in my collection already. I must admit I prefer the Grigio to the Rosso. The red strap does pick out the red numerals on the dial, but I prefer the more muted grey, which picks out my grey hair. But it is very nice of them to include two high quality straps as part of the package. Remember, these were $350 on Kickstarter. And the pocket shot to finish, it's definitely not a shouty or a showy watch. It may be trying to look like a Patek Philippe, but I don't think there is any intention to deceive here. Nobody buys one of these trying to convince people that they're worth millions of dollars. It's far too discreet a look overall for that. Moans and niggles. Well, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the watch. This is a neat and tidy example, all the printing is well done, stitching on the straps is good, the case is well finished, etc, etc. I guess it comes down to two things: how you feel about the Patek reference and the price. Regarding the Patek reference, are you still morally opposed to any homage watch, even one of a vintage reference that's 70 years old? Or have you always lusted after a 1463 but don't have a couple of $100,000 to spare? Or don't you actually care about the Patek reference at all and are prepared to judge this watch on its own merits? If that's the case, then we're back to money. If you bought one of the older variants on the Kickstarter campaign, I tip my hat to you because I think you bought very, very well. If, like Marcus, you picked one of these up for 550 Swiss francs direct from the brand, then I'm sure you will be more than satisfied with your purchase. But if you're looking to buy one today, I would urge you against paying the over odds for one. That they are retiring colourways is all very nice for owners, but I certainly don't think it makes them collector's items. And they may well have been designed in Geneva, but I'm pretty sure there'll be another batch of very similar looking watches fresh out of a Chinese factory before too long. There are plenty more Patek references from the 1950s for them to homage after all. So there you have it, a good looking watch with a clever and increasingly popular marketing strategy behind it. If you like the look, go for it, but don't pay above retail. Don't ever pay above retail. If this one got close but didn't quite get a cigar, why not check out Retro Chronos by Nezumi or Mercure instead? Thanks for watching, I'll see you all again in a future video, I hope.